In this video, I'm going to discuss some home Wi-Fi security best practices. A home Wi-Fi router has several passwords associated with it. The first one is the password used to connect to the web interface to configure your home Wi-Fi router. After connecting using the default password to your home Wi-Fi router, you probably should set up your own password. I went into Advanced Settings, Administration, and Set Password on this particular Netgear router, and it asks for the old password, which is probably your default password. And you can type a new password here. Pick something that's easy to remember but not easy to guess. You'll have to confirm it, and then you can apply the settings. The other option you have available, at least on this particular router, is password recovery. It has various options you can pick for security questions. You're probably familiar with these from bank and credit card. Some of them are a little bit ridiculous. What was the name of the first Netgear product you purchased? Because I've got that in my scrapbook. Not quite sure, but anyway, you can pick your questions and put your answers in. I believe this particular router will ask you for the serial number, so you actually have to have physical access to the router. This is not something that you could configure remotely if you don't have physical access. So it is fairly safe, but I don't use it. I know what the password is, and if I forget, I can always enable the factory default settings by resetting the router and reconfiguring things. After configuring your Wi-Fi configuration password, the next set of passwords are the Wi-Fi passwords themselves. The first thing you'll need to do is pick an SSID. I have the option to pick two because I have 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz bands. Likely you will too, as this has been around for quite some time. I name them separately so that if I have a device that's capable of 5 gigahertz, I know the appropriate SSID to connect to take advantage of the higher bandwidth. However, you can name these whatever you want. I typically stick a -5G for 5 gigahertz on the end of the SSID that's associated with 5 gigahertz. However, you can do whatever you want. Other settings are the channel. I did a site survey to see which channel was least busy in my neighborhood, and it appeared channel 6 was this way. I believe I left this one the default because I didn't really care. This is much shorter range, so it can be set to the default and should be fine. You'll need to pick your security options. These are the encryption protocols. Picking none would be bad, as it leaves your Wi-Fi access point open for anybody to connect to, which, unless you don't care about somebody connecting and doing criminal activities, you probably should not pick none. WEP is old and can be cracked in a matter of seconds. WPA is fairly old. So WPA2 with the pre-shared key, PSK, using AES encryption is probably, at the time of this video anyway, what you should set up and use. Now, the options are separate for each band, so I picked WPA2, PSK for both. And finally, setting up your password. Now, there are several schools of thought on how to pick a password. The one that I like the most is using a combination of seemingly random words. So you could pick something like box, Diet Pepsi, candle, having nothing to do with what's sitting on my desk right now, of course. But anyway, pick something that you can remember. Typically 4 words are easy to remember, and once you've typed it into your devices a few times, you'll remember it. And you could have separate passwords for 2.4 gigahertz versus 5 gigahertz. However, I would probably set them to be the same. A slightly more advanced option would be to disable the SSID broadcast. This would mean to the casual observer scanning with their smartphone or other device, they wouldn't actually see the name pop up. You would have to know the name in advance to be able to connect to it. However, there's still ways to figure out that your Wi-Fi access point is there. So I go ahead and turn it on to make it easy to find the network. Most modern home Wi-Fi routers have an option for guest networks. This is good if you have somebody visiting your house and they want to get on the internet, but you don't want to give out your password for your actual Wi-Fi router. Basically, if you have a guest network, it will be segregated from your regular Wi-Fi network, and the devices that connect to your guest network won't be able to see the devices on your home network, and vice versa. This way you can have a guest over, give them the password for the guest Wi-Fi, and you don't need to worry about anybody being able to go through any shared folders or go through the devices on your network or even be able to see them. So this is definitely an option that I have set up and use quite a bit, for instance, when my kids come to visit. It's very similar. You pick an SSID name. Per standards, I pick guest on the end so it's easy to identify, and then guest 5G for the 5 gigahertz band. And then you can pick a password. Password, I just typed in here as an example, but you could use a similar naming convention to what you used for your actual Wi-Fi password. However, don't pick the same password. You should have your passwords for guest Wi-Fi, your actual Wi-Fi that you connect your own devices to, and the configuration password all being different. A final note on things that sometimes try to make it easy to connect to a Wi-Fi router but end up being less secure would be WPS or Wi-Fi protected setup. This allows you to use a PIN number to connect for a short period of time rather than having to enter the password. I wouldn't use it. It's somewhat insecure, and it's easier just to set up guest Wi-Fi if you have somebody coming over and you don't want to give them your password. It's easier just to give them the guest Wi-Fi password and use that. Additionally, you could always recycle your passwords, especially your guest Wi-Fi. You could change it periodically if you want to, or if you don't have very many guests, like I don't have very many guests, but that's a different issue, then you certainly could change it after people come to visit so that they can't use it and come back in the middle of the night and camp out in your driveway. Well, actually, that's another issue too. But anyway, it is something you could definitely recycle those passwords if you want to. By following these home Wi-Fi security best practices, hopefully you will be able to keep your home network safe.